Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well and that you've had a really powerful, informative, and transformative day so far. Thank you for having me. My name's Farzana, and I'm joining you from Medellin in Colombia. And I got Seppi here to help me with slides. I'll be presenting on how we can use the frameworks of health, healing, and disability justice as traveling frameworks in these really uncertain times as we build towards new things, and how in that we might mobilize money as medicine. And I speak to money as medicine in the way that Edgar Villanova from Decolonizing Wealth kind of frames it, that we know the revolution will not be funded, that we need to move out of capitalism and this growth model, but actually towards seeing where reparative justice is possible and where some of our most radical ideas and visions can be sustained in the interim. So Seppi, if we move to the next slide, I can share a bit about where I'm speaking from. So I'm one of the co-founders and co-executive director at Healing Justice London. We create capacity for transformation, and we specifically do that through the lens of building community-led health and healing, and really thinking about what are the localized infrastructures that we need to just build right now, given the ways in which oppression makes us sick, disables us, and also leads to premature death, as Ruth Wilson Gilmore speaks to. And we really try and work from a multi-systems approach and looking at the specific ways in which structural violence interfaces with our lives, and the types of ways in which intimate and interpersonal violence gets reproduced and in our daily lives as a result of what we are experiencing. So at Healing Justice London, if we go to the next slide, how we do that work is over 3 sites. We have multiple sites of shaping and change, as you can see in this model here, but we specifically focus on these 3, though not exclusively. The first is within our communities that have been marginalized. We have to grow our own language, our analysis, our own frameworks and resilience, especially as people who've been harmed and traumatized by the types of violences we experience, in order to self-determine our provisions in societies and to reimagine them, not from a place of trauma and scarcity, but actually from a space of being resourced and abundant. And then the second area is our structural capacity. As much as what is happening on a local level, we need infrastructure. We need to dismantle the ones that are anti-life and harm us and enact violence on us. And that can be everything from our public health system to our schooling to our housing systems, and start to reimagine and build towards life-affirming infrastructures that meet our baseline material needs of stability and safety, but also enable us to move towards the thriving and generative futures we want. And then the third area is sustained capacity. There is already genius in our communities. There are already radical ideas and solutions that are happening and being practiced, but how do we make sure those are sustained, given that we're prone to trauma, burnout, conflict as a result of all the things that we're experiencing and the ongoing oppression? And so how do we bring medicine to our movements, and movement with a capital M, holding all the different sites of shaping and change in order to move towards more thriving collective liberation? So if you can go to the next slide, that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. Just if you aren't aware already, but I'm sure everyone is already, what's the clock of the world, as Grace Lee Boggs would say. We are in urgent times, and especially just having spent the last few weeks with Indigenous and Black and global majority leaders, visionaries, and feeling the impact of the ecological crises on the global majority people, and the level of ongoing violence and global fascism that is prevalent. We are in urgent times, and we need to mass organize, restore civic power, and build unifying political strategies and new frameworks to traverse this uncertain time together. And this is just where we're at. We all need to be in that work. And given that we are what we practice, how can we practice new ways together and new solutions and strategies? And for us at Healing Justice, you'll hear this frame phrase a lot, rehearsing freedoms. And as Ruth Wilson Gilmore says, we have to rehearse the new social order coming into being, and what it means to whatever we are demanding, we want to be able to do that out loud and publicly, and be able to see it in our environments, in our societies. So really playing with these ideas of what do we need to rehearse, and how can we rehearse together new futures, and understanding that it's a practice, and that we're figuring out together. And holding that, one of the key kind of frameworks I want to speak to is disability justice. Disability justice, built from decades of organizing and framed by Patty Byrne from Sin's Invalid and their incredible organizing. If we can go to the next slide, really speak to how oppression intersects with disability. And previously, when we hear about disability, we might hear it in the context of disability rights, which relies a lot on litigation and a kind of rights framework. But disability justice here also understands the intersections in which we are also disabled and made chronically sick through oppression, but also that the ways in which other forms of oppression intersect with disability and create more vulnerability and more oppression. There are 10 principles that can be understood as also design principles. How do we design just, accessible, intersectional, sustainable futures on a very micro level, from our events to our relationships, but also on a much more scaled and structural level. And these are 10 that you can look up. But on the next slide, I'll just draw out a few that I really wanted to speak to that I think are really important for philanthropy, and how we move towards mobilizing resources in this time where it needs to be mobilized. So Seppi, to the next slide. First, we know that philanthropy is an extension of capitalism. And so we need to be embedding the role of philanthropy also in an anti-capitalist lens, understanding what is the strategic role that philanthropy can play in moving money, doing the reparative justice work, and moving away from also its extractive relationship to who it's funding, what it funds, and not having a relationship to our bodies, our souls, our beings that reproduces this capitalist logic of brutalizing bodies, being extractive, being transactional, but moving towards a more wholesome politics that understands we are not just capital, but that we're moving towards something that liberates us from this economic model, and that funders and philanthropy are being explicit, not only in holding an anti-capitalist politics, but also liberating resources in that direction, and understanding the role, the strategic role that funders could be playing in that. The second is commitment to cross-movement organizing. Often philanthropy wants to see itself as like, just moving money. We don't have time for that. We need to see ourselves allied and alongside all the other movements that are critical right now, and really being able to understand how ableism and disability justice can also speak to and show us the ways all our contexts have been designed to brutalize our bodies, to make us sick, to disable us, to not include also particular types of bodies, like racialized bodies, working class bodies, queer bodies, non-binary bodies. So really holding that, how does the work that we do in philanthropy really get intimate with allying with other struggles and seeing itself in that movement with a capital M. This one's a harder one, the third one, of recognizing our wholeness, because we are in a Anglo-Eurocentric colonized mindset, which really sees everything as commodity. Our relational politics is one of capitalism. And what disability justice really affirms is a paradigm shift that understands our wholeness with sickness, with disability, without our lives being centered on productivity or desirability, or how valuable that society considers us. So inviting us to a different relational politics with one another that really understands our wholeness and doesn't see us in these metrics of productive, valuable, desirable. And that is something, again, that funders on a personal level, but also in your teams, in your organizings, can be seeking to practice. The third is sustainability, that recognizing we need different pace. And that doesn't always mean slowing down. That I think that can be a quite diluted understanding, but understanding sometimes what is the rhythm and the pace that our work needs. Sometimes given the level of oppression, we may have to move at pace, but how can that become sustainable? Who, with the privilege, the resources, can move at pace so others can rest and slow down? What is an ecological way that we can organize and sustain this work in a long-term sense? And that is completely tied to having a deeper understanding of oppression and trauma, and whose bodies get impacted in which way. And so you can't really do sustainability and build a more ecological rotary system that helps us move appropriately to time and pace without also understanding dynamics of power, of who gets to rest, who feels safety in their body, who gets to move quickly and who doesn't, and who do we need to move quickly and who do we not. And philanthropy does need to move quickly. That is its role, but it needs to understand who in philanthropy can do that and who can't, and what are the ways that it can do that doesn't make people collateral damage. And just because we are speaking to disability justice, I also wanted to draw this one out, that there is no homogenous way of looking at disability solidarity, that there are nuances and complexities in that. And that's all of our work to get closer to understanding what that disability solidarity can look like. We know the pandemic is disabling. We know racism, as Nkem and Defo, who you've probably already met today, has said racism is the first pandemic, is disabling, and understanding the kind of chronic stress, the chronic sickness that our bodies go under. And we have, with more diseases, with the loss of biodiversity, and just the ways that our societies have been designed to be so unsustainable, that we anticipate more forms of sickness, and that all of us will experience being disabled or chronically sick at some point. And so how do we actually really get, again, intimate with this understanding so we can design our societies, our futures? And philanthropy can also invest in those infrastructures that hold our flourishing in that sickness, in that disability, and hold the different ways that will look, because it will be pluriversal. It won't look one way, and it won't look one way even for dominant bodies. And so really expanding our imagination and also our ability to ally and move. I know I've zoomed through quite a lot. I've tried to be really mindful of time. I know we only had like 10 minutes, but I hope that this has given you a little bit of a taster, but also an invitation and provocation to really do the work we all have to be studying, and that the disability justice movement for time has been leading the work, and is leading the work also on a climate justice lens. And these are really pertinent times in which we can be learning, allying, and building alternatives, which is most practiced by our incredible disability justice movement leaders. I'll close there. I hope that you have an incredible rest of the conference, and I've got some references on the next panel, and I'll let you have a moment with that. Thank you so much, everyone. Be well. Thanks, Effie.